And so then the next day, there's a mountain there called Cross Mountain. And so Cross Mountain, the terrain is very similar to Apparition Hill, except more. Cross Mountain is higher, probably 2-3 times higher than Apparition Hill. And so I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to do it. And then when we were in the bus talking about it, at the retreat house talking about it, we were going to go at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then Father Matt said, well, why don't we go at 5:30 in the morning? I'm like, why would you say that? And so, but I have to admit, Father Matt was right, because it gets hot there. I mean, it was getting hotter there. And so noon, it would have been about 85 degrees or 80 degrees, and it would have been really hot because we were sweating just going at 5:30 in the morning. So I actually ended up being very grateful that I went, and very grateful that we went at 5:30. Did any of our group go at how was that, Joe? Was it hot?
Yes, it was a little warm.
Yeah, so I'm glad that we went at 5:30. But Cross Mountain is so at the top of the mountain, there's this huge cross. And the cross was actually erected in the 1930s. And so Father Matt and I were talking about this because I couldn't remember all the details, but that cross was erected, so correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, or Father Matt, the cross was erected because they were having some difficulty with crops and so on and so forth, and so they put the cross up there to kind of plead with God to help them with their agriculture in the 30s. And then later on, the communists were attempting to find them, and every time they were told, just look for the cross and you can find them, and then every time they went to look for the cross, the cloud cover hit the mountain and they couldn't find the Catholics, and so it saved them. But anyway, so as you go up this mountain, you can do the Stations of the Cross. So Father Matt brought his little stations book with him, and we prayed the stations together. It's actually, the terrain is the same as Apparition Hill, but it is a beautiful walk. And when you get up to the top, this is a view that you get. And so you can look out over the countryside, and it's just absolutely wonderful, And I'm guessing this was around maybe 8 o'clock in the morning at this point. And so you just see this beautiful terrain. And then there's the cross. And so, they don't even put stairs there, So, they really want you to earn it. And so, but it's also cool to see how the rocks have been worn down, rubbed smooth by people's feet walking on them. And so there we are at the top, and you really felt like you accomplished something when you got up there. And so anyway, so then you get to the top there, we spent some time in prayer up there, and then we descended back down. And so it was, again, an incredible experience of prayer, and again, beauty in terms of not only just what you can see there, but just the experience of everybody being in unified purpose. We encountered people. Father Matt met somebody along the way that he had experienced prior in his life, who was a narrator of what?
It was a Rosary CD.
Yeah, Rosary CD from when he was a kid, and so he met the person who was a narrator of that. And she had this really, really old Labrador Retriever who was really struggling to get up in the mountain. She said, well, this will be, whatever the dog's name was, this will be his last trip up the mountain because he can't do it anymore. And so it was a neat experience to be able to participate in that. And then on Friday night, as I said earlier, we had this experience of adoration. And it was from 9 till 10 in the evening. And we get there, and it's a hard picture because it's with my phone, but just to see how crowded it was. It's just an incredible experience, And to just pray there for an hour in front of the Blessed Sacrament with all those people there, and as many people as were there, and even though it's outside, it was as quiet as could be. There was nobody talking, nobody, doing anything other than adoration, and it was incredible experience to be a part of that. And one other story through St. James Church there that was significant as well is Father Matt and I, after Mass we would pray morning prayer. There was all these seats, and so you could just grab a seat anywhere on a bench. and we would usually find a shady tree and sit under the shady tree and do morning prayer. And so one morning after Mass, we had just sat down, and somebody went up to Father Matt and asked him if he spoke Spanish, and he said no. And they said, well, would you hear our confessions anyways? And so poor Father Matt was trying to explain to the people that he didn't really know Spanish that well. And so, but they were not to be deterred. And so Father Matt in his kindness went off to be with those people and to hear their confessions. So now I'm sitting all by myself on the park bench. And this older Irish woman came up from Ireland, came up to me and asked if I spoke English. And I said, no hablo inglés. No, I said, of course, yes. And so she said, would you hear my confession? I said, yes. And so heard her confession. And then after she finished, a young Australian man came up to me. I heard his confession. And so one after another, people from all over the English-speaking world came up to me to have me hear their confession. And the one that was really kind of cool was this one young lady who was from Nicaragua living in Paris, spoke perfect English. She came up to me and she didn't want to go to confession, she just wanted my advice. And so, I think we were there for a little over an hour. And I have to say that was one of my most powerful experiences of the Sacrament of Reconciliation, perhaps because it was just so organic and so spontaneous. But it was a really cool experience of that sacrament, and really helped me to recommit myself to that sacrament, I think. And so the rest of these slides are just some photos of Medjugorje as a whole, because I just found the place to be exceptionally beautiful. Statues of the Blessed Mother everywhere. And again, it's a small statue. But again, she's got a smile on her face. And this was the path to a place where you could do adoration. This is part of Ivan's house that he grew up in. This was like the barn. Obviously it's in disrepair. And then the house next to it is a nice modern house that his mom and dad live in currently. And there you can see the house a little bit better. And that's just a doorway to the barn. And this is just, walking around town. Lots of blue paint, and so we asked, what the blue paint was about, because a lot of things are painted blue. And so we thought maybe that was some kind of a code against the communists or something like that back in the day. And I think Ivan just said, no, it's just blue. That's the paint we had around, nothing significant, but it is pretty. This is just there's a number of little chapels, churches, whatever you want to call them, that kind of spring up. And so this is the outside of one and the interior of it. And that's Jesus. It's hard to tell because it's overexposed, but that's Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane outside there. And then this is just a typical storefront with the religious good items. And a lot of it is homemade. Particularly the rosaries. There must be 1 billion rosaries in Medjugorje, and almost all of them are handmade. And so you have a hard time deciding, which rosary you want, because there's just so many good ones. And then, we would, from where we were with Ivan to where St. James Church was about a 20-minute walk. And if you choose to walk, it's this beautiful path. And the two biggest pieces of agriculture in that part of the world are grapes for wine and tobacco for cigars and cigarettes. And so as you walk into town, so to speak, you walk past all of these vineyards. And then the tobacco, that's not tobacco, that's just a pretty shot. And there are more vineyards, and it's like a red dirt. And so, Father Matt and I walked there, and the other pilgrims walked there many times to and from the church and from town. And it was just a very serene walk, very pretty. And every once in a while you'd see someone in their car who had things that they wanted to sell as well out of their trunk. And very nice. Sometimes they didn't speak a lick of English, but you're able to communicate with them. And so it was really a neat experience. And this is the three of us. Ivan is very Americanized. He's married to a woman who I believe was the former Miss Teen Massachusetts or something. And so his wife and kids, they split time between America and Medjugorje. So when the kids are in school, they stay in Boston, or Boston area. And then after school's over, they come out to Medjugorje for the summer. And then Yvonne will go into Boston during the winter when things are not so busy there. And then this is our group that went. Not all of them are from St. Teresa. There was a small group of people from the Boston area. They were kind of inserted into our group. And so they took a better group picture of us that we all got as well. It was such an incredible experience for me. And the reason why I kind of do this travel log with you is because, first of all, I wanted to share it with you, but secondly, again, because of its impact on me in terms of beauty. You know, I can't describe to you what that meant for me in terms of that experience, other than to say how profoundly it impacted me, and how profoundly this experience has positively impacted my vocation to priesthood. Not that I was struggling with it, but it just made it so much more powerful for me, so much more, I don't know, I mean, it's really helped my vocation. I hope I'm a better priest because of this experience. And I hope I will continue to be a better priest because of this experience. And I think the whole sum of it, I mean, the one word that I use to describe it is beauty. Because there are so many different kinds of beauty that when you sum it all up together, it's just that spiritual experience of beauty, I think, that I talked about last week. You know, the goodness, the truth, the objective quality of beauty was just something that I experienced in a very real way there. And now I'm going to get to Mary and owls. So, and Father Matt helped me with this, so I have to give him a lot of credit and thank him, because I don't know if I would have made the connection if it were not for him. But when I was so I go to Florida every year, Marco Island. In fact, in November, I think it's November 10th I leave this year. I usually go second and third week in November leading up to Thanksgiving week. And I go with two of my classmates, and we've been doing it for 20 some years. And so an hour away from Marco Island is this swamp called the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary that's owned by the Audubon Society. And so when you go in this swamp, it's the last old cedar swamp left in Florida, in the United States for that matter. And so there's a 2.5 mile boardwalk through the swamp when you get there. So you see all sorts of creatures. It's stunningly quiet there. I usually go at 7 o'clock in the morning as soon as it opens, because I don't like people there. I like nature. And so I try to be the first one on the boardwalk so I don't encounter a lot of noisy people. And when you're the first one on the boardwalk, you usually see things that other tourists don't see later. But I usually go 2 or 3 times every year when I go down there. And I'd gone down there probably 15 years, and I'd never seen an owl. And you can hear them all the time, but never saw one. And so one day I go down there, and this was right after a friend of mine had passed away, who was kind of responsible for me taking an interest in photography. And he was a bird photographer. And so almost a couple weeks after, maybe a month after he died, I saw that as I was walking on the boardwalk. That's a barred owl. I was telling Father Matt about that a couple weeks before we went to Medjugorje, or a couple months, I can't remember exactly when. But and so I just had that experience. I mean, like I told you earlier, I mean, I just looked at that owl. I know it sounds really silly, but I looked at that owl, and I was just captured by its beauty, and got a lump in my throat, tears in my eyes, and I said, "Thank you, God." And that owl just sat there and looked at me for about 5 minutes, and he didn't seem in a big hurry to move. And then, if you know anything about owls, when they fly away, you don't hear a sound. That's the way they're designed, because that's how they capture prey, as they sneak up on them. And so I went down to adjust something on my camera, and I looked up and he was gone. I had no idea which direction he went. But it was such an incredible experience for me. And so we get back from Medjugorje, and the last several years I've been doing my yearly retreat in Florida as well. I used to go to and I still do occasionally, but haven't been there for a while, but I go to the Gethsemane retreat house, the Trappist Monastery, and outside of in Kentucky. There, I've gone to what's the one in Iowa? Yeah, I just forgot the name of it. I go there all the time too. Anyways, there's a Trappist monastery, or New Mallory, and outside of Dubuque, Iowa. And so I've gone there. But lately, I've just wanted to go down to Florida and to pray down there. And so I've been going in the summer for the last 4 or 5 years, or actually 5, 6 years since I've been here. And so I went down, so we ended up coming back from Medjugorje on Memorial Day. A month later, I went down to Florida, and I'm walking through the swamp, and it was kind of in the middle of the later part of the morning. And this one lady comes, she saw me with my camera, and she comes up to me, she says, "Did you see the owl back there?" And I said, "No, where is it?" And she kind of walked me over there. And when I got there, I saw this, and I'm sitting there thinking, how did I miss that? You know? And so, and again, it was a family, so it was a mom, dad, and a fledgling. And so I didn't get a good shot of the fledgling, but one of the owls was eating a fish, and this owl was just kind of sitting there in the branch. And so I remember texting Father Matt and saying, "Hey Matt, guess what? I found this owl." And then he reminded me of that conversation that we had before we went to Medjugorje. And so, again, I had that experience of the lump in the throat, tear in my eye, and I thank God for seeing this owl. And so I went there. I usually go there 2 times when I'm down there for a week, and both times I saw an owl. And I'd been there probably 100 times prior to that and only seen one once. And so I decided to go back a 3rd day, which I hadn't planned on doing. And it was a really cloudy, stormy day, and it was in the middle of the afternoon, but there wasn't anybody there. And I heard an owl off in the distance, and I thought, well, he's way off there, I'm not gonna see him. But sure enough, the 3rd trip, I saw an owl on the way out. I was like, holy cow. So then I come home, and I go to the seminary. I forgot why I was there for a dinner at the seminary, and I was driving around the property, and I saw that. Now it's a crummy picture because the owl was so far away. But I've been at that seminary, I mean, I went there for 5 years, and been there hundreds of times since then, never seen an owl. And all of a sudden I see this owl sitting in a tree, a fledgling owl. It's a great horned owl. And so I texted Father Matt, I said, "Guess what? I saw another owl." so I don't think that's a coincidence. So I think the Blessed Mother wants me to see owls, or at least wanted me to see owls this summer, to remind me and to reinforce that experience of beauty in my life. And so and I know telling you this, I feel kind of embarrassed telling you this because it seems kind of silly, but it is for me something that just reminds me of how potent beauty can be, you know? It's something I'll never forget. I mean, this whole summer, from the time we went to Medjugorje till the end of summer, I mean, it's just an incredible summer for me.